Okay, in this video we're going to cover another piece of ordnance from history. This is something that was devised by U.S. military light fighters. So your, paratroopers, your air assault, light infantry and that. And that is a Claymoreette. Now, everyone should know the U.S. M-18A1 Claymore mine. They're very effective, but they can be kind of heavy. They weigh like 2 to 2.5 pounds each, and that does not include the bandolier. They're supposed to have about 1.5 pounds of explosives inside, if I remember correctly, and then you also had the shrapnel, the casing, and all that with it. So light fighters, they use them, but they're heavy, so they can only carry so many of them. They're also pretty bulky. So they devised something that could do the same role, but didn't weigh as much, and that's the Claymoreette. This is not a really good example here. This is typically done with 100-mile-an-hour tape. They just covered it all the way across and on the sides in tape to turn it into one big green block so it would not be seen easily when it's used inside forests and grasslands and stuff. I just did this to show you that you can use other types of tape on it for closing the Claymoreette. These essentially are, like they sound, mini claymores. The weight of explosive in them is about 5/8 of a pound compared to the at least 1.5 to 2 pounds of C4 inside a standard claymore. These do not have as large of a killing radius or killing zone, but because they're so small, you can carry more of them. You can spread them out to better cover a kill zone, a closer in kill zone. Something like this was typically designed for use in ambushes. You would use something like this to initiate your ambush. The enemy walks into the kill zone, you set these off, cause panic, injure quite a few of them, maybe kill a few of them, and then you would open up with your small arms. Now, to construct one of these, it's pretty simple. First off, you need a box, a smaller box. Typically, the type that they used, I was told, was the smaller cereal boxes. Now, they would not open them on the ends like normal. What they would do, they would slit open the backs. They would make a slit going vertical here, up and down, and then they slit the ends so that you could open it up. They would then take the cereal, little bag of cereal that's inside, take it out, eat the cereal. Take this box then and turn it into a claymore. First layer that you did in there is your shrapnel, whatever you had available. Rocks, brass, general bits of metal from shrapnel type material, nuts, bolts, screws, nails, whatever. You made a layer of it across the bottom in here. You then took your block of C4, I have my training aid here, put the block next to the box, and then you would slit it or cut it off. You'd end up with almost a half a block. So these are 1.25 pound sticks on M112 block. So it come out to around 5/8 of a pound. So they then would take the C4 and they would split it horizontally going across and then peel it open a bit. At this point, they would prime their block. Now, you could use a blasting cap on it, but these were designed to be ready-made and quickly emplaced. They would already be primed and that stuff when you put them in place. So they would just use deck cord. Obviously this is training deck cord. Now to prime that little block, they would use a double overhand knot. So they would make their loop. You want about 8 inches, 9 inches on my end here. And this is hard to work with right now because it's a little bit cold. Bring the end, loop it down. Oh, I gotta go a little bit longer, don't I? Okay, so go 8 to 10. This isn't cooperating because this stuff is really cold right now. Training deck cord's hard to work with as is. Add to it that it's damn near frozen, and it gets even worse to work with. We have our little bite, which should only be about an inch or so. You should have a tail that ends up being close to 6 inches, and then you just pull it tight. A double overhand knot has the strength of 1 to 2 blasting caps. So remember, we got our little half block here about. We've split it in the center. We then would take the deck cord knot, put it inside the block, close up the ends around it. Just take a little bit of tape, usually electrical tape, and you would put 1, maybe 2 pieces of electrical tape on there to hold the block closed, just to make it easier for the assembly. Then you would take your half block that's primed, put it in here, mold it over the back of the explosive. If you got a little bit of extra room, which you should, you'd maybe take a little bit more C4 off this other block. Make sure that you have enough for another Claymoret. Put it in there, kind of fill it in, pat it down in place and that stuff. You would have your tail sticking out. Close up your box over to C4. That 6-inch tail should stay inside the box. Does not need to be sticking out. So we'd end up roughly like this, the C4 inside over the top of our shrapnel material. You would then take 100-mile-an-hour tape and start wrapping it, going all the way around it, closing up the box, making sure it's not going to pop open. And there you go. You had your Claymoret. Now the length that you would have for your business end on your deck cord, it's going to vary. This is actually really short. I used a really short piece of deck cord for this, but you would want anywhere from, I'd say, 6 to 12 feet of deck cord off the back. These were designed to be tied in a daisy chain in a series. So you would have your line main laid out across the ground, and then you'd have one Claymore or one Claymoret tied off here, set out covering it at kill zone, another one, you know, how many feet down, tied off covering the kill zone. And then you would have your initiation system set up on one end of the line main. When the enemy's inside the kill zone, you initiate. The line main goes off. The blast travels down the deck cord to each Claymoret, going from the point of initiation to the other end. It'll just be a series, boom, 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 boom. It's really fast. Sometimes you can tell the difference between the blasts. There's that split second, but it's supposed to be pretty much instantaneous. As soon as the Claymorettes would go off, then the light fighters, the light infantry, the light engineers, whoever it is doing the ambush, would then open up on the enemy personnel inside the kill zone, take care of the ones that are left. So, how many of these could a person carry? Well, as many as they really needed to. As many as could fit inside their rucksack. These were typically carried inside the ruck or inside an assault pack. Like I said, this is supposed to be green all the way across. They're easy to make, easy to put together. I've shown you all the steps on making it this time because, quite frankly, very few people are going to have access to det cord or C4. Now, if you can't, if you're in a guerrilla situation, you're not getting a hold of the cereal boxes, you would use whatever smaller type box or container that was available. Whatever could be used as a Claymore casing. So it could be, you know, some type of Rubbermaid or Tupperware container, the little sandwich containers. You know, it could be a really, like the box that checks come in, you know, the really small ones, anything. And then when you do that, you just, like I said, you'd put down your box, bring in your C4, your explosive block, cut it to the length of the container, and if the box is wider than this, you know, you cut whatever amount of C4 you need to put in there. Typically you're going to prime these from dead center. Just makes it better for the blast. You decrease your chances of tossing explosive all over the place. And the explosive that would get tossed that does not detonate is sensitized, and it's a major UXO hazard, unexploded ordnance hazard. You see that quite a bit on demo ranges. You'll sometimes see little white blobs laying on the range. Well, that's unexploded C4. That's why you typically prime things from the dead center. It's easier and more efficient for setting off the explosive charge. I will make a note because we're going into winter time. C4 gets extremely brittle during winter. It's almost like a hardened clay, really is a good way to describe it. It's really tough to work with. It's tough to cut and form and that stuff. It really doesn't form at all. Where fresher stuff that's been warm and that stuff, it's still pliable. You can mold it inside your containers or whatever type of charge you're using, but during winter time, this stuff can get as hard as a rock. So just be advised. If that would happen and you're trying to make a Claymoreette, just do the best you can, really. You still are going to cut it and that stuff. You'll put your knot in the center and you'll try to force it together. Maybe you'll use extra or electrical tape to hold the pieces together around that knot. So just a little note on that for the engineers that are out there or light infantry that are watching this. I do know that people that serve in the military do watch my videos. You know, once in a while they leave comments and saying, thank you, you taught me something that my squad leader didn't. And typically it's coming from a person who's serving as a squad leader or a platoon sergeant now. Their leadership did not teach them when they were privates. Well, now they're in charge of privates, and you know, they need to pass this information on, and they need to find it out somewhere because they ain't finding it out from the manuals. Stupid ass explosives and demolitions manual turned into a safety brief manual, for God's sake. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.